rhinoceros that was killed, fed to Chamath on his vacation, and then attached to his linen shirt. I guess let's just get this out of the way. Trump was arraigned, I guess is the term. He was charged in New York with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Alvin Bragg alleged Trump orchestrated a catch and kill scheme as well to suppress damaging information before the 2016 election. Of course, Trump pleaded not guilty and did a feisty press conference or speech, rally at Mar-a-Lago after that. Prosecutors say the scheme involved falsifying business records to conceal payments to Stormy Daniels. We know all that. Same thing Michael Cohen went to jail for. The indictment wasn't a speaking indictment where it explained all the details. So Alvin Bragg hasn't tipped his cards by explaining in detail what the legal theories are and which information he has. And he was pretty clear about that he was not going to tip his cards, which makes this even more hard to understand what's going on and creates even more divisiveness. Predictably, the right is framing this as a witch hunt. But surprisingly, many on the left, including former SDNY head Preet Bharara of the amazing podcast Stay Tuned with Preet, which I love, he felt this was the weakest of the four major investigations that Trump is under, and he expressed some concerns on his podcast that it was light and not detailed, and he might have not actually pursued this unless he had a 99% or something like that chance, because it is the president's. Sacks, I guess everybody's expecting us to fight over this, but to just be a little preemptive here, as much as I think Trump is like the most unethical person to ever hold the office, this does seem a little light. And I'm hoping Bragg has the goods on him, because why bring a misdemeanor case? You know, and these are all, I guess, misdemeanors that are being elevated to felonies because of tax evasion, possibly, or election interference. So what are you, steel man, or just generally speak about the case here? Because I know that you're a man of law and order.
Well, many people on the left are criticizing this case. Jonathan Chait, who's a liberal writer for the New York Magazine, wrote a good column about it. And look, here are the reasons why. Number one, the underlying behavior here is that Trump engaged in a private settlement with Stormy Daniels. That's not illegal. Even if it is, so-called hush money, that is legal. You're allowed to do that. Number two is that he used personal funds to do it. He did not use campaign funds. And this is why Alvin Bragg has had to make this kind of distorted, ridiculous claim that he should have used campaign funds to do it. But does anyone believe that if Trump had used campaign funds, that wouldn't be alleged as the crime? So he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't here. I think that, what the law is trying to do with these rules around campaign funds is protect donors from candidates misappropriating them. And Trump had every right to use personal funds to engage in the settlement. It's a major distortion of campaign finance rules. Third, these campaign finance rules are federal laws. They're not state laws. So it's not up to Alvin Bragg to enforce them. And in fact, the feds looked at this and decided not to prosecute it, because if they did, they'd have to enforce similar laws against Hillary Clinton. Recall that Hillary Clinton had a problem where she used campaign funds to fund the payment to Christopher Steele to write the Steele dossier. And that was a real problem, and it was miscategorized as legal fees. And she had to pay a fine for that, but no one talked about locking her up over it. And no one was talking about, indicting her and sending her to jail. And so part of the reason why I think the feds didn't want to look at this is because they'd have to look at similar cases that are even more egregious. And then finally, the last thing is that we're well past the statute of limitations on this whole matter. So Alvin Bragg is really out here on a limb. He's past the statute of limitations. He's enforcing laws that are not his business to enforce. They're distorted interpretations of those laws. And the underlying conduct here is fully legal. So I think everybody is kind of like wondering why he's doing this. And I think there's two theories. Either Alvin Bragg is incredibly stupid,
which he's not,
or he's incredibly smart.
Yeah.
And the sort of the three-dimensional chess explanation that Ann Coulter has is that this is all a giant honeypot for Republicans, because they're all rallying around Trump here because they perceive, I think correctly, that he's being railroaded and he is the victim of a political prosecution. But in rallying around him to defend him, you see that Trump's poll ratings among Republicans in the primary are going through the roof. DeSantis are going down. And so what Ann Coulter fears is that this is all an elaborate ruse to make Trump the nominee, because Biden would much rather face a re-election against Trump than against a young, youthful, vigorous governor like a DeSantis.
Do you think Bragg has a bunch of more information and maybe that tax evasion is the issue he'll go after? Because that seems to be the other theory here is he's not going to do the federal, election stuff. He's going to go after the tax evasion, which is what they already got the Trump organization on when Weisel, I guess the CFO, is going to jail for 6 months.
It's going to be hard to connect
and
the dots on these things.
And they did $1.6 million fine for that company. Good, Chamath.
These are misdemeanor crimes, and to convert them to a felony, the crime needs to have been done in the process of aiding and abetting another crime. And
right. Tax evasion is the concept here, Chamath.
When he listed the bullet point list of all of the reasons or all of his evidence, it seemed to point to what David said, which was just these campaign finance violations.
Yeah.
This whole thing just seems like such an enormous waste of time. Just think about the amount of money that will have to be spent on just securing New York City every time he shows up. The 5-car motorcades, the Secret Service, the police, the this, the that, the disruption to people for what really ultimately I think is right is kind of like, it's a bit of like, man, this case should have been brought years ago. Well, or not at all.
In relation to that, they were told to stand down from doing that because of you can't indict a sitting president, and that's paused. So that's another legal theory that's going to have to be tested.
Jason, the feds looked at this years ago and they decided not to press charges.
They were told to not do it because he was a sitting president. No, they were.
No, he's been out of office now for a couple of years. Why didn't they move forward?
They were. That was the process they were doing. So that's
it takes 2 years
been established. The previous DA said he was told to stand down because the person was in office.
Cyrus Vance decided not to prosecute on the same underlying offenses. That was his decision. He decided not to. Who told him to stand down? No one can tell him to stand down.
Yeah, the office of...
Cyrus Vance decided not to move forward with this very same case when the statute of limitations had not expired. Now it has, and Alvin Bragg's moved forward.
Yeah,
I mean, you really have to stretch here to come up with any kind of plausibility to this case. And I mean, you have to wonder why he's doing it. Is it just naked partisanship? Or are they trying to make Trump the Republican nominee?
Well, here's what Vance said on Meet the Press this weekend. I was asked by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District to stand down on the investigation. And they were asked to stand down as well because of you can't indict a sitting president. So anyway, all this stuff's going to get done in the wash. I don't think we have to spend too much time on it because we'll find out, I think, in the coming weeks.
Do the Democrats actually want him to get convicted? Then what? He's going to be under house arrest in Mar-a-Lago because he's not going to be sent to jail. And then what? Then DeSantis actually will win the nomination. So what exactly is the perfect outcome, which is to create this theater, waste taxpayer resources, only to have Trump acquitted just so that he can win the nomination and then he can go against Biden and lose? This seems so far-fetched and idiotic. Move on. Right. Close this chapter and move on.
Totally. This is ripping the country apart for no reason and such a stupid case. Such a stupid case.
What do you
Even
think about
the people who would like to prosecute Trump, like you, Jason, I think have a problem with it. And one of the reasons why this is going to be counterproductive, even to the anti-Trump forces, is that by going first with this case, Alvin Bragg is poisoning the well for any future case he might bring against Trump, because now all future cases against Trump are going to be seen as painted with the same brush, which is a nakedly partisan sort of witch hunt. And there may be other cases out there that have more validity to them, but they're all going to be seen as of a piece with this sort of Alvin Bragg prosecution.
That was Preet's position. I think it's a logical one. I don't disagree. What do you think of the other 3 cases? January 6th, the interference in Georgia, where they recorded him on tape, and then the stolen documents and the obstruction of justice. Or do you think all 4 cases are politically motivated and none of them have any validity to them, Sacks?
I mean, look, the question you have to ask is, if Donald Trump was a private citizen who never ran for president, would he be the target of any of these prosecutions? I mean, he was, a high-profile business figure for decades, and he wasn't prosecuted like this. And so that's really the question you have to ask. And
in this case, you actually had Cohen go to jail. Cohen did go to jail for the same crime, so the answer is yes.
What? Michael Cohen wasn't prosecuted till after Trump was president.
No, what I'm saying is, you asked if he was not
do you really
president,
believe...
if he would... Let me finish. You asked if Trump was not a president, if he would have been prosecuted for this crime. In fact, another person, Michael Cohen, was prosecuted for this crime and did serve jail time. So the answer is yes, he would have been. And they brought these cases, this banking kind of cases, and they brought the other one for the $1.6 million fine and Weasel were going to jail. So I think they would actually. But anyway,
I don't
my
think
question
so.
to you was,
I think
of the
this
other
is,
three,
I think that,
do you think all four are politically motivated is my question to you? Or do you think any of them have validity?
Look, I don't want to comment on the other cases until I see what case is actually made and what the merits of them are. However, I don't believe that all these prosecutors all over the country would be looking at Donald Trump this way if he was just a private citizen who never ran for office. And I think we have a big problem in our political system when political disagreements are criminalized. And this has been a nasty trend that's been going on for many years. It was usually, I guess, practice against staffers. You know, here or there, you'd have some executive branch staffer would, find themselves on the wrong end of a prosecution and they'd end up going to jail. Maybe they get pardoned or not. But now it's reached all the way to the top, and you have presidential candidates basically being prosecuted. And I do not believe they'd be prosecuted if they were not major political figures. And it looks really bad for the political figure who is leading it right now in the Republican Party to be Joe Biden's opponent in the next election to be prosecuted by one of Joe Biden's political allies. I mean, if this were happening in some other country, the United States would be criticizing it as some sort of, banana republic type move. So this is not the direction we want our politics to go. And look, I don't
disagree.
Trump to be the nominee. I support a different candidate, but I think that to be interfering in our elections, for Alvin Bragg to be interfering in the political process this way is a reach, and it's setting a horrible precedent for the future. I mean, we're talking about major presidential candidates being prosecuted. Let me ask a follow-up
question then, Sacks.
By local DAs. I mean, why would we want this?
So let me ask a follow-up question then. The DOJ is currently investigating Hunter Biden, and then obviously that goes up to the big guy with the 10%. Do you think the DOJ should be investigating Hunter Biden, or do you think we should be giving a pass to presidents and their families?
Well, the Hunter Biden case, I mean, this is one where you've got foreign governments basically paying off Hunter Biden for political access. Now, that may ultimately be legal because I think influence peddling is kind of a business that takes place all over Washington. But that actually does speak to the integrity of our political system. At the end of the day, would I send Hunter Biden to jail? No, I don't think so. Like I said, I don't like criminalizing political disagreements, but what Hunter Biden did was definitely pretty shady. And,
for sure.
And influence peddling should be looked at.
Hunter Biden and Trump and his family are both shady, is my feeling on it. We got to get better candidates in here. Nikki Haley, your candidate, Chamath, raised $11 million last week. She's on fire. Friedberg, you want to jump into this and touch the third rail? You want us to move on?